My name is Ryan Giesinger. I am one of the proprietors of the Practical Magic and Curio shop here in Saskatoon. Put very simply, we try to be a Michael's parable to everybody who doesn't have a Michael's parable. If you have an obscure spiritual path, we're going to try to find you what it is you need to practice your path.
Yeah.
Aside from just being a store and supplying goods for people, one of the reasons that we really wanted to put the store in place was to provide a sanctuary, a place to just be, but to be safe. Because some days are atrocious. It's like they're trying to bury you alive. On days like that, we love to provide a space for people to come and just sit and relax, just be, let some stress out of themselves until they're able to tackle the day again. It really dawned on me when right after we first opened the store and I was coming home. I'd be physically tired from a long day of work, but I sure wasn't emotionally exhausted like I had been at so many other workplaces. And I think a big part of it is just the environment in which I work. And it would be selfish of me not to share that. But they don't need to buy a darn thing. Just relax. Just breathe. And if you're worried about bringing a dark cloud with you, I buy sage by the pound. I have more than enough to smudge.
Awesome. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what Magick is?
I sure can. Actually, it's funny because I teach a Wicca 101 course, and just recently we did a section on magic and ethics. And there's a lot of different definitions of magic. My favorite is a two-word definition: probability enhancement.
I like it.
It's coincidence alteration or coincidence control is another word for it. Aleister Crowley defined it as the art and science of causing change in conformity with will. And then if you go back into old grimoire studies, it gets even more wordy. They put very basically and in basic English, essentially it's, in most traditions, it's a belief that everyone has a spark of the divine in them, that magic isn't a supernatural thing, it's a very, very natural thing. That everybody has that spark of the divinity in them, and magic is nothing less than tapping into that. Some people will see magic, especially people of a Wiccan persuasion or ones where theology holds more importance, I guess, than power. You're going to see that people will see magic as very little more than prayer. Kind of guided prayer, very focused prayer, but prayer nonetheless. But magic is any kind of set of actions. It's done with intent. Magic can be as simple as physical motions or a chant, even one just spoken inside the head. Or it can be as elaborate as candles and circles and herbs and incenses and oils and all the to-do. I've been asked, okay, well, what if magic isn't real? What if there is no magic and it's just psychology? Well, luckily enough, my education's in psychology and sociology. At the very least, you're helping people tap into archetypes within themselves. They're giving themselves, they're convincing themselves that what they thought was outside of their power to do is now within their power. So you're empowering the crap out of people. Not only that, but because an enormous part of magical study is to know yourself, to become aware of your own internal space, and to learn how to sit in very difficult emotions, how to turn say a very, very hurtful emotion inside yourself into something more positive, self-transformation, a transformation of kind of our own energies. Some people would argue, oh well, you're fooling yourself, you're playing around with yourself. Well, we do that all the time. We do little tricks like that all the time. When we're exhausted, we tell ourselves we can, I can still do this, I can still do this. And we push ourselves to find new limits. At the very least, magic is a set of psychological technologies to help us create change in our life, help us deal with difficult emotions inside of ourselves. Somebody who practices magic, one of the things you have to grasp very firmly are your emotions in magic. Emotion is the fuel for magic, but it can also totally set things awry. One thing I explain to my students often is that you can say something with your mouth, or you can do a specific motion, saying, oh well, for the good of all. But if inside yourself you're thinking, oh, I hate that person, oh, I hope they start on fire. That's the end of your spell. That's what you're doing. Magic happens inside, not outside. But being clear on your intention, being able to rise up an emotion. A common thing in magic is to raise up an emotion, because that emotion is thought to be the fuel of magic. So you bring up that emotion, you sit in that emotion, and it's not always a happy emotion.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to throw that emotion away.
Yeah.
And that's one of the trickiest parts. To on one hand and in one moment want something with all your might,
Yeah.
and then the next moment not care if you get it.
Yeah, that's a lot of self-control.
It's a bit
like
strange.
channeling emotions and things like that. Yeah.
Yep.
So you probably, like, emotional awareness is probably really important.
Know thyself is
Yeah.
very important. Again, what I was talking about with spell work is I can convince myself that I mean to bless this person, and I hate this person, but I want them to get out of my life, so I'm going to bless them with prosperity because they're looking at a school far away. So I'm going to do all this. I hope you go and everything's great.
Yeah.
But if I'm saying that with my mouth and inside my emotion, I'm like, oh, I hate you so much.
Yeah.
You're harming them. And most magical traditions run by variants on what is called the Wiccan weed. That is, add and harm none, do what you will.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't believe in harming another. And so being aware of your own emotions is very important.
Yeah.
Very, very important. Just to be sure that you're not essentially setting yourself up for a karmic fall. In a lot of magical traditions, or at least the ones that are very pagan oriented, you find 4 great virtues. There's hospitality, which is helping other people out. There's courage, honesty, and vitality. Now, a lot of people don't understand entirely what I mean by vitality. They think, oh, it means I got to go out for a jog. And yeah, no, that can be very helpful.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that health is not just physical, although our health is very much connected across kind of levels or barriers. Physical health is linked to mental health, which is linked to spiritual health. All of them are very closely tied together. It's very easy to recover from a physical wound, and what I mean by that is if I'm cut, my physical body does all the work.
Yeah.
I don't have to really think about it. Oh yeah, I have pain and I have to clean it and I've got to take care of it,
Yeah.
but I don't really have to spend much conscious energy on
Yeah.
it. When it's a spiritual wound or a mental wound, it's a lot more noticeable because you have to do the work. The body isn't healing itself
Yeah.
on its own. You have
The body
to do the
doesn't
work
always
for
know
it.
how to heal itself on its own.
Well,
Yeah.
and this is why being able to talk to others, being able to share
Yeah.
psychological technologies. I mean, when people think of technology, they think of cell phones
Yeah.
or computers. But there are social technologies that can be very, very helpful. Actually, in matters of emotion, one thing I teach my students is I discuss with them and I teach them a little bit about neurochemistry, or rather the geology of the brain, or geography of the brain,
Yeah.
geology. There's stones in there.
Yeah.
But the geography of the brain, it's important that people realize there's a part of your brain which is very primal called the amygdala. And the amygdala is kind of the seat of your emotions. I call it a primal part of the brain because it's always been there to kind of keep us alive. When the amygdala is fully in control, when it hijacks everything else, you can't consider other people's welfare. You're so focused on your own. Now, one of the biggest traits of this amygdala is that when it is really, really active, it can shut down, or dim rather, not completely shut down, but dim, what's called the prefrontal cortex. You, as a thinking entity, you live in the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
That's where we all kind of live. That's our thinking brain.
Yeah.
And so when we get really, really emotional, our amygdala will try to shut down or kind of override
Yeah.
the prefrontal cortex. There's prisons filled with people who had an amygdala hijack. And so I teach my students, to be aware of their emotions and to recognize an amygdala hijack. And I teach them a few methods to try to bring themselves away from that amygdala hijack. Actually, one of the things that I've given you there, a lot of the techniques for helping fight against anxiety. One of the best ways to kind of fight back and get the prefrontal cortex, or the thinking you, back in charge, is to do things which engage specifically it.
Right.
Counting things, labeling things.
Grounding.
Yeah, well, essentially grounding. And grounding isn't just a magical principle.
Yeah.
One thing I'm very pleased to see a lot of magical methods now kind of sliding their way into psychology. It's very pleasing to me.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and engaging that prefrontal cortex can be as simple as looking around the room and naming things. And I know this sounds silly. It's not like, oh, that mirror is George. Look at it and say, think in your head, that's a mirror. There's a clock. There's a shelf.
Yeah.
There's a stool.
Yeah.
Because as you're doing that, you're making that prefrontal cortex, you're forcing it to think.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it starts to calm down the amygdala.
Right.
It starts to stop that amygdala hijack.
Yeah.
Now the amygdala hijack, of course, because everything is so connected in the brain. When the amygdala gets it going, it will cause your endocrine system to go absolutely haywire.
Yeah.
You will have adrenaline. You will have all sorts of things coursing through your system.
Yeah.
I know some people will give themselves heck for, oh, why am I so excited? Why am I so upset? Why am I so whatever? Well, neurochemistry works, and when your brain releases that neurochemical, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
It's bad enough that you're feeling bad about a situation. Don't feel bad for feeling bad.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, it was so intense, I don't know why it's so intense. Well, it's intense because it's neurochemistry.
Yeah. There's so much guilt and shame around mental illness. There's so much shaming yourself for feeling this way when, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I hate that word so much. The word should.
Shouldn't,
Yeah.
should or shouldn't, according to who or what?
Yeah, exactly. I shouldn't feel this way. Well, you do. So.
Well, and according to neurochemistry and the way things are working,
Yeah.
actually you're feeling exactly the way that things should make you feel.
Exactly.
The thing is figuring out how to cope with that, figuring out how to trick the neurochemical system, how to make the endocrine system not release that as much.
Yeah.
It also bears mentioning that the brain is very, very adaptable. Although we don't repair nerve damage well, the brain is incredibly adaptable.
Yeah.
If a person spends a lot of time in a specific emotion, the brain actually starts to, be more receptive to those neurotransmitters. It creates more receptors for that, which then crowd out some other receptors for other emotion.
Yeah.
And it takes time. Now, luckily, if you're, there is a light.
Yeah.
Although I can't see inside my own brain, I'm sure that when I was young, I came out of the normal closet and came out of the broom closet at the same time, which caused a lot of chaos. I was diagnosed as being chronically depressed, and oh boy, did I feel it. But over the years, I know that my brain, at the time, I would have had a lot of receptors for neurochemicals related to sorrow and depression.
Yeah.
The brain that I live in now is very, very different than the brain I was in as a teenager.
Yeah. So it is possible to change.
Oh, absolutely. My brain has wired different receptors. Now I have probably a lot less for sorrow.
So how would you recommend people kind of approach Magick, especially if they're struggling with mental wellness issues?
Oh,
question.
Magick can be very empowering, and it focuses much on the self. An important thing to keep in mind if you're dealing with mental health, with mental health discomfort and mental health issues.
Yeah.
Make sure that it can be helpful. It can help you learn to control emotion. It can help you learn to take that energy, transform it, and put it into something different in your life. However, some people come to Magick expecting that they're going to be able to set their enemies on fire with a glance, or they're going to be able to curse. Don't do that.
Yeah.
In some traditions believe in karma or tikkun, the threefold return. Others just believe that like attracts like. If you do a bunch of nastiness, you're going to draw nastiness.
Yeah.
And if you're already in a space of depression, that's going to make things worse.
Yeah.
It's going to make things worse. It also bears mentioning that people who are experiencing strong schizophrenia, I actually will suggest not to engage in Magick. The reason for that is that reality can be very difficult to figure out what's solid for people who are strongly schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Add to that Magick,
Yeah.
where you start to get emotion and impulse from things like plants or from the elements around you. It would just confuse them more. I had one student who was schizophrenic years ago that I tried helping. I tried teaching her because I thought this might help her.
Yeah.
And if anything, I think it made her life worse. Because she asked eventually to have her magical ability tied up and bound up. So we did.
Yeah.
On the positive, she's been quite healthy, hasn't had much in the way of attacks, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But Magick can be incredibly empowering. It allows you to not only cause change in self, but cause change around you. And as I was talking about, it being probability alteration or coincidence control, it helps tip things in your favor. Now, it's important to not call up what you cannot put down.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is really understand what you're doing. A great example is when I was young and depressed, I was having quite a few money issues.
Okay.
And And so I decided I was going to do a prosperity ritual, and I was going to link it to the moon. What I hadn't bothered to do was look at the face of the moon. Generally in Magick, when the moon is waning or you know, kind of fading away, that's seen as a time for banishing, for getting rid of things. So I banished my own prosperity.
Oh no.
Oops.
Yeah.
Because I focused on connecting my prosperity to it. So you just have to be aware or inventive. I learned my lesson there, and now whenever the moon's waning and I need a boost, I banish poverty. Much better idea.
Yeah.
Much better idea. But it's very easy to make little mistakes. That's why I remind my students, make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure that you know, have a bit of information, have the background, and then try it. And again, magic takes place inside. It isn't just words or noises or motions. A lot of people think that they're going to pick up some great old grimoire and they're going to make the noises that are there, and Klaatu, Verata, Nikto, and then something's going to happen.
Supernatural.
Yeah. You're just making noise.
Yeah.
You're just making noise. It happens inside of yourself. That can also make magic very difficult. Say if a person is depressed, because I remember so clearly depression. And I remember how I just really couldn't be bothered to give a damn about anything. Now, in that case, I'd suggest a bunch of self-healing magic or meditations or things like the middle pillar ritual, which are meant to kind of connect you to things around you. Yeah. The idea behind that is to connect you to the divine, however you view it, to connect you to the earth, connect you to all sorts of power sources from all over the universe, and just kind of re-energize. Because once again, when you're depressed, you don't have the energy to give a damn about a thing. Well, getting some energy into yourself can certainly help. And this is why I think magic can be useful.
You had mentioned that it's really important when you're practicing magic to kind of have like that background to know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any recommendations for how people can make sure that they know what they're doing? Like
Absolutely.
places to go or books or websites or anything like that?
There are a lot of good books on the subject. For me to try to list them off, I'd be making your video very, very long. But talk to practitioners or talk to people in stores. Most store owners or people who own stores like this are generally familiar with a bunch of different spiritualities, and so we can, by asking you a few questions and finding out what moves you spiritually, we can point you in the right direction or the right kind of like a magic that'll work for you or work well with you. I warn people against looking at magic online, and the reason is one of my least favorite websites called spellsofmagic.com, and I swear it is though you asked somebody who knew nothing about magic how to write magical spells, and so they did. Or it's like if you ask somebody who you know periodically yells, "Oh, Harry Potter is evil, should be put to death," ask them what magic should be like, and then that's where it comes from. I mean, on the internet, anybody can put anything. So I mean, if you're looking for resources, look for resources actually attached to an organization. And what I mean by that is, like here in Saskatchewan, we have the CWAS, the Congregationalist Wiccan Association of Saskatchewan. But if there's an organization behind it, or like if people are interested in Druidry, things like the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, OBOD for short, or the Ardentine. Whenever there's a group associated with it, you know that things have been a bit more fact-checked. Things have been given a bit more scrutiny, hopefully. I'll give just a couple books. If you want to learn more about ceremonial magic or high magic, kind of the more Abrahamic, that is to say, kind of inspired by Christianity and Judaism and Islam, you might want to look for 12. So high magic, modern magic, 12 lessons in high and, oh, for heaven's sakes, I'll just grab the damn book.
That's helpful.
The author is Donald Michael Craig.
Okay.
Modern Magic, 12 Lessons in the High Magical Arts.
There it is.
So there's that one. If you wanted to get more from a little bit more of a natural perspective, I suggest looking at pagan or Wiccan sources. Scott Cunningham is an excellent author. He tends to make things very accessible without getting too complicated. Just as normal society is all sorts of complicated and diverse, so too are our religions like Wicca or just pagan religions. You'll find that there's all sorts of hodgepodges all over the place. Often they're called trads. and they'll kind of put their own beliefs on things.
Yeah.
The reason I like Scott Cunningham is that he was able to separate the essence of Wicca and the essence of magic from the dogma of the traditions. And once again, there are a lot of different approaches, pretty much for every culture there's been shamans, or there have been magic or well workers in amongst that culture. So just about any culture that you find interesting, you can find some method of magic from there. As for advice, make sure that I would advise people to make sure that you feel comfortable. If you have niggling doubts about things, that's, again, remember, magic happens inside. Those niggling doubts will infect your magic as a way.